We're live from New Delhi, watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, coming up in the next 30 minutes. At the UNSC meeting on Iran, the US says all options on the table to stop the slaughter. Iran retorts that any act of aggression will be met with decisive response. Trump warns to invoke Insurrection Act to deploy military to put down anti-ICE protest in Minnesota. US President Trump announces formation of Board of Peace for Gaza will supervise the working of newly formed Palestinian Technocratic Committee, members to be announced shortly. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to participate in a program marking a decade of Startup India initiative will interact with members of startup ecosystem. And in sports, Lakshya Sen keeps India's title hopes alive at the India Open Badminton Tournament in New Delhi. And updates from West Asia first. After weeks of mounting tension, the United States and Iran confronted one another on Thursday at an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council as Washington issued renewed warnings to Tehran over its violent suppression of nationwide protest. The UN Security Council, in an emergency meeting, discussed Iran's deadly protest at the request of the United States. Speaking at the meeting, the U.S. envoy to the U.S. said it stands by the brave people of Iran.
President Donald J. Trump and the United States of America stands by the brave people of Iran. Iran says it's ready for dialogue, but its actions say otherwise. This is a regime that rules through oppression, through violence, and through intimidation, and has destabilized the Middle East for decades. Well, enough is enough. We all have a responsibility to support the Iranian people and to put an end to the regime's neglect and oppression of the Iranian nation. Colleagues, let me be clear. President Trump is a man of action, not endless talk like we see at the United Nations. He has made it clear all options are on the table to stop the slaughter. And no one should know that better than the leadership of the Iranian regime.
Well, Iran's representative at the meeting warned the United States, saying any aggression will be met with a decisive, proportionate, lawful response.
Any threat to use of force against the Islamic Republic of Iran under any pretext, including claims of protecting protesters or supporting the Iranian people, constitute a grave and manifest violation of international law and the UN Charter. Such unlawful actions directly breach Article 2.4, which prohibits the threat or use of force, and Article 2.7, which enshrines the principle of non-intervention. No rule of doctrine, narrative, or political justification can legitimize unilateral military action or coercion without explicit Security Council authorization under Chapter 7. Invoking humanitarian rhetoric to justify force in a deliberate abuse of international law.
Well, White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt on Thursday said that U.S. President Trump is closely monitoring the situation on the ground in Iran.
The president and his team are closely monitoring this situation, and all options remain on the table for the president.
And the United States, meanwhile, imposed new sanctions on Thursday on Iranian security officials and financial networks, accusing them of orchestrating a violent crackdown on peaceful protest and laundering billions in oil revenues. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced the measures in the wake of the biggest anti-government protest in the history of the Islamic Republic. Among those sanctioned is Ali Larijani, Secretary of Iran's Supreme Council for National Security, whom Washington accused of coordinating the crackdown and calling for force against protesters. 4 regional commanders of Iran's law enforcement forces and Revolutionary Guard were also sanctioned for their roles in the crackdown in Doordarshan and Fars provinces. After days of angry protest over a surge in immigration agents on the streets of Minneapolis, U.S. President Donald Trump warned to invoke the Insurrection Act to deploy military forces in Minnesota. Confrontations faced between residents and federal officers have become increasingly tense after an immigration and custom enforcement agent fatally shot a U.S. citizen, Rennie Good, in a car 8 days ago in Minneapolis, and the protests have spread to other cities as well. Trump's latest threat came a few hours after an immigration officer shot a Venezuelan man who the government said was fleeing after agents tried to stop his vehicle in Minneapolis. The man was wounded in the leg. Well, the domestic deployment of the military is a law allowing the president to deploy the military or federalized soldiers in a state's National Guard to quell rebellion, an exception to laws that prohibit soldiers being used in civil or criminal law enforcement. It has been used 30 times in U.S. history, according to New York University's Brennan Center for Justice. The Supreme Court has ruled that the president alone can determine if the Act's conditions have been met. Trump has already taken the unusual step of federalizing National Guard soldiers to help with immigration law enforcement in Democratic-run cities over the objections of state governors, including in Los Angeles last year, which a justice ruled in December was unconstitutional. Well, let's know, does the law allow people to sue ICE agents? Now, the U.S. law makes it very difficult to sue federal agents as individuals, but victims can sue the federal government for compensation when its employees cause financial or bodily injury in the course of their work. This is covered by the Federal Tort Claims Act of 1946, an exception to a legal doctrine called sovereign immunity, which usually shields the federal government from lawsuits. Now, in a FTSA case, a plaintiff typically alleges a government employee acted negligently or wrongfully. The statute might apply, for example, if an ICE agent damaged vehicles during an enforcement action. The statute would also allow family members of someone killed by ICE to seek compensation for wrongful death. Now, several FTCA cases in the last year have drawn attention to the relatively obscure statute, which allows suits by citizens and non-citizens. And U.S. President Donald Trump announced the formation of a Gaza Board of Peace, a key phase 2 element of a U.S.-backed plan to end the conflict in West Asia. The board's creation comes shortly after the announcement of a 15-member Palestinian technocratic committee charged with managing the day-to-day governance of post-conflict Gaza. The committee will work under the supervision of the Board of Peace, which Trump is expected to chair. The plan also calls for the deployment of an international stabilization force to help secure Gaza and train vetted Palestinian police units. The U.S.-backed Gaza peace plan first came into force on October 10th, facilitating the return of all the hostages held by Hamas and an end to the fighting in the besieged territory. Well, Britain has welcomed the commitment to move to phase 2 of the peace plan in Gaza. Its Foreign Minister, Yvette Cooper, also welcomed the announcement of the Palestinian National Committee for the Administration of Gaza. Also, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres laid out his priorities and welcomed the developments in Gaza.
In Gaza, I welcome the start of phase 2 of the ceasefire announced by the US and reiterate that humanitarian aid must flow unimpeded, the ceasefire must be implemented in full, and the way must be cleared to an irreversible path to a two-state solution in accordance with international law.
Well, meanwhile, amid an uncertain security situation in the region, the embassies of India, the US and UK have issued advisories for their nationals, urging them to be vigilant and avoid unnecessary travel. Indian mission advised its nationals to avoid all non-essential travel to Israel. The Embassy of India also provided helpline numbers in case of any emergencies. Well, the Indian Embassy has been constantly working on updating the database of Indian nationals and also reaching out to them to register with the Embassy during the last few years. The fresh warning follows an earlier advisory issued by the Centre on January 5th amid mounting concerns about the worsening security situation in Iran. And earlier this week, the UK Foreign Office also issued a new travel advisory for Israel, warning British citizens to avoid visiting the country for all but essential travel. The US Embassy in Jerusalem published a new security alert advising American citizens to review any travel plans in case of disruptions and make appropriate decisions for themselves and their families. And moving on, European countries sent small numbers of military personnel to Greenland on Thursday, as Denmark said it was pressing on with plans for a larger and more permanent NATO presence to secure the island coveted by US President Donald Trump. Now, the modest European deployments, meant to help Denmark prepare military exercises, sent a strong message of support a day after a meeting of officials from the US, Denmark and Greenland failed to reach any breakthrough on the impasse. Now, Denmark had about 150 military and civilian personnel working at its joint Arctic command on the island. Also, Germany, France, Sweden, Norway, Finland and the Netherlands have said they are sending military staff to begin preparations for larger drills later this year. In Copenhagen, Denmark's defense ministers said he did not have a small final figure for the envisaged expanded NATO presence in Greenland.
There is now participation from a large number of European countries, including some of the Nordic countries, and we are currently experiencing that there are several countries that offer and can contribute, both in terms of personnel but also in terms of capacity. I don't have a total number, but it is clear that we now will be able to plan for a larger and more permanent presence throughout 2026, and that is crucial to show that security in the Arctic is not only for the Kingdom of Denmark, it is for all of NATO.
And Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado presented a Nobel Peace Prize medal to US President Donald Trump during a high-stake meeting that could influence how Trump seeks to shape Venezuela's political future. Machado, who described the meeting as excellent, told she offered it in recognition of his commitment to the freedom of the Venezuelan people. Her gesture appeared aimed at underscoring the symbolic importance she places on US support for Venezuela's democratic struggle, as well as her effort to gain influence over the country's future direction. Trump has previously expressed frustration at not receiving the Nobel Peace Prize, which was awarded to Machado last month. Machado highlighted the need to build democratic, solid and stable institutions. Well, also, US President heaped praise on Maria Corina Machado for presenting him with a Nobel Peace Prize. In a post on social media, Trump described the gesture as such a wonderful gesture of mutual respect. And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. Japan FM Motego to meet External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar for strategic dialogue on security, trade and Indo-Pacific. India begins Under-19 World Cup campaign with win against the United States in Zimbabwe. And we remember OP Nayyar, the maverick composer who redefined Hindi film music at his birth centenary.
One of India's newest states. One of India's oldest lands. Jharkhand is a hidden Welcome to Jharkhand, the land of
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Lipakshi Kuran, and moving on, India celebrates National Startup Day on January 16th, highlighting innovation under the Startup India initiative. With over 1.2 lakh startups and 100 plus unicorns, the day honors entrepreneurs powering India's growth and global rise. DD India's Tapas Bhattacharya has this report.
India's startup revolution takes center stage on January 16, National Startup Day. Launched under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Startup India initiative in 2016, the day celebrates innovation, entrepreneurship and ambition shaping a new India. Today, India is home to over 1.2 lakh startups and more than 100 unicorns, making it the world's third largest startup ecosystem. From fintech and health tech to green energy and deep tech, Indian startups are creating jobs, attracting global investments and driving economic growth.
In the last 10 years since I have been an entrepreneur, the biggest shift that I have seen is the rise of B2B tech solving vertically niche and specific problems. And in the recent times, I have been noticing a huge wave of solid technical founders building artificially intelligent products on top of software, not just selling in India, but across the globe. That excites me a lot. And I feel that such wave of products is going to take India to its next level.
National Startup Day 2026 will be marked by grand celebrations at Bharat Mandapam in New Delhi. Highlights include states' startup rankings, national startup awards, investor interactions, startup showcases, and key policy announcements. It's a platform to connect ideas with opportunity and vision with action.
With innovation at its core, the National Startup Day showcases India's entrepreneurial spirit shaping the future. As startups drives jobs, technology and growth, the journey from ideas to impact continues. With camera person Vishwabandhu, this is Tapas Bhattacharya for DD India from Delhi.
Well, on the occasion of National Startup Day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will participate in a program marking a decade of the Startup India initiative at 1 p.m. IST at Bharat Mandapam in New Delhi today. During the program, Prime Minister will interact with members of India's vibrant startup ecosystem. Select startup representatives will share insights from their entrepreneurial journey. Prime Minister will also address the gathering on this occasion. Over the past decade, Startup India has emerged as a cornerstone of India's economic and innovation architecture. India's startup ecosystem has witnessed unprecedented expansion during this period, with more than 200,000 startups recognized across the country. And moving on, Japan's Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi arrived in India on Thursday for a strategic dialogue with External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar that is expected to focus on strengthening the partnership in security, trade and technology and the situation in the Indo-Pacific. The dialogue will be an opportunity for the two sides to take stock of bilateral cooperation amid wide-ranging changes on the global stage. During his India visit, the leader is also expected to visit Rajghat and pay his tributes to Mahatma Gandhi. Now to some sports news now. Former champion Lakshya Sen produced a composed performance to progress to the quarter-finals of the India Open badminton tournament, but Kidambi Srikanth and H.S. Pranoy bowed out after a spirited show in New Delhi. Sen, a 2021 World Championships bronze medalist, showed resilience and maturity to overcome Japan's Kenta Nishimoto 21-19, 21-11 in the second round. The 24-year-old will next face Chinese Taipei's Lin Chunyu. Earlier, Kidambi Srikanth fought hard but went down by 21-14, 17-21, 21-17 to France's Christo Popov, who is the reigning World Tour final champion. Pranoy also pushed his opponent close before losing 18-21, 21-19, 21-14 to 8th seed Loh Ken Yew of Singapore. The top men's double pair of Satvik Sairaj, Ranka Reddy and Chirag Shetty, having entered as one of the favourites, also exited after a heart-breaking 27-25, 21-23, 19-21 loss to Japan's Hiroki Midorikawa and Kyohei Yamashita in the second round. And India began the Under-19 World Cup campaign with a 6-wicket win against the United States in Bulawayo city of Zimbabwe. India put the United States into bat after winning the toss. Anil Patel instantly validated the decision by delivering a fiery opening spell that broke the back of the USA top order. The right-arm pacer picked up 3 wickets at his opening burst. Patel then returned to clean up the tail and bagged the first 5-wicket haul of the tournament and bowled the USA out of just 107 runs. However, a brief spell of rain reduced the target to 96 runs in 37 overs, which India achieved in 17.2 overs. India will be back in action against Bangladesh for their second game on Saturday. Well, January 16th this year marks the birth centenary of Hindu film composer OP Nayyar. He broke conventions and blended rhythms like no other. His music continues to echo across the generations. From chart-topping classics to an unmistakable style, Nayyar's journey was as rhythmic and rebellious as his melodies. Here's a look at the life and legacy of the maestro who redefined Hindi film music. Diptanshu Kashyap brings us this special report.
One of Hindi cinema's most distinctive and influential music composers, OP Nayyar was a pioneer who reshaped film music with his foot-tapping music. Known for his uncanny ability to blend Western rhythms with Indian beats, he created melodies that were energetic yet deeply rooted, timeless yet modern. His music, driven by drums, castanets, dholak and tabla, continues to soothe, uplift and resonate across generations. Born in Lahore on January 16, 1926, Omkar Prasad Nayyar began his journey in film music by composing background scores for Kaneez in 1949 and Asman in 1952. Widespread recognition followed through his collaborations with filmmaker Guru Dutt in films such as Aar Paar, Mr. and Mrs. 55, CID and Tumsa Nahi Dekha. He went on to reach greater heights with celebrated scores for Fir Wohi Dil Laya Hoon. At the peak of his career, Nayyar became the first Hindi film music director to command a fee of 100,000 rupees, a remarkable sum in the 1950s. Known for his fiercely independent spirit, OP Nayyar was often described as a rebel or a maverick, labels he appeared to embrace. He won the Filmfare Award for the Best Music Director in 1958 for Naya Daur, which included the iconic Ye Desh Hai Veer Jawano Ka. In later years, Nayyar lived a life of quiet withdrawal, appearing occasionally as a judge on music shows and in long-form radio interviews. He passed away on January 28, 2007 at the age of 81 following a cardiac arrest, leaving behind a musical legacy that continues to define rhythm, rebellion and enduring brilliance. Diptanshu Kashyap's report for DD India.
All right, that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Kurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.